One of the many reasons that our civilization time after time has developed certain technologies has been under the influence of other civilizations. Even the Metatronic presentation of Enoch, who met the representatives of another civilization, it is a technological expression in such viewpoint. It is not coincidence that in the temple of Abydos in Egypt, aside of the other sculpted figurines which show a helicopter, modern boat or yacht, a zeppelin and a plane or glider, as well it is shown a chemical production line which comprises all its industrial equipments to produce certain liquids. It is clear that the stone beam, although in a considerable height on top of the columns of the temple, it shows clearly signs to damage it with the purpose of destroying it altogether, or even steal it, as it has happened in our previous human history. This chemical station comprises of the classical staged processes on the production line, starting from the right with the silo and the wort kettle, where it is conducted the milling process, and being followed by the boiling together with the filtering equipments, and further conditioning with pre-filtered filling equipments. As it is shown in the carved schematics of this chemical station, it is almost a general blueprint for the chemical industry, regarding completing the needs of human beings for certain products, as beer, wine, and other forms of liquids serving the standard of a civilized human life. Although our modern chemical industry today seems complex, the basic principles of such chemical processes are based on the simple stages of milling, malting, mashing, lautering, boiling, fermenting, conditioning, filtering, and filling, as it is shown in this carved chemical station in the temple of Abydos in Egypt. So any pretension that we as today's modern humans started from scratch in our modern development, it is showing only our arrogance mixed with naivety, because we should not forget that the human ignorance can be finite or infinite, depending on the sources of information and multiple centers of learning the knowledge. In this viewpoint, it is important to emphasize that the modern technology, which has an inheritance from the previous human technology in different levels of the developments of different societies of our humanity on our earth, it should be recognized that the technology should serve the improvement of the standard of life of every human being on our planet. In this perspective concept, it means that the technology should be used by the masses, and not be a monopoly of the few to become richer. Therefore it is to be praised the cheaper priced technology of small and medium capacity of production, which are produced and sold by the Chinese companies in the frame of better intervention of the state, because they utilize the rules of capitalist finance and capitalist market to maintain the employment of the masses through massive sale of cheaper production lines, in order to employ or self-employ at best a greater percentage of the active population of our planet, to improve social cohesion of everybody in different societies of our humanity at this modern technological time, if we dare to say so. So the Western values of better achievement in technological development should be intertwined to produce and sell massively cheaper technological production lines, or even scientific machineries to serve the masses for employment or self-employment at best. This will increase massively the standard of life of everybody on our Earth. Notice from the video of the moon the massive gigantic complex of artificial structures which are erected in such a format not to be distinguished easily from the natural terrain of the moon, because other civilizations consider our humanity still being uncertain in its way of development. This means that we are not developed enough to deal and face the true reality that is existing around planet Earth in space, including the presence of other civilizations on our moon. The purpose of science and scientific research is to tell to every human being on planet Earth the truth of achievements of scientific knowledge and to make the technology useful for the masses to improve the standard of life, and not to serve any clique like before in our history. We need your opinion regarding who is present on our moon, and what are their intentions being there and what are their intentions towards our humanity. We are grateful to our ancestors for the ancient knowledge conveyed to our recent previous generations, who have the merits of elevating and advancing the modern knowledge and modern technology, because the ancient knowledge was kept sacred by the priests in the temples which served only the cliques and not the masses of folks. The ancient Greek historian Herodotus does not state that the pharaohs built the Sphinx. The inventory stela found in 1850 in Egypt states that the Sphinx was restored by the pharaohs. So we do not know a lot about our ancient history, particularly before the Great Flood. Although we are facing today the drastic climate change, We still do not understand due to our naivety that the Great Flood was not a single event, and it is not about only raising of the sea level due to the melting of the glaciers. Above all, it means repeating patterns of flooding of different areas of the world of our earthly parts of the planet, and catastrophically some of such floods can take the form of creating massive waves or earthquakes not encountered for millennia by human beings on Earth. So in order to serve better our planet, we need to have green technologies with cheaper prices to be used by the masses of folks in order to avoid the risk now and not after 100 years or more. So as we notice from the carvings of the Temple of Abydos in Egypt, certain human societies before the Great Flood at the time of Noah were not so primitive as some scholars have presented to us with their own naivety combined with ignorance. From 450 BC, Herodotus states,
that this lake is artificial and formed by digging is self-evident, for about in the middle of the lake stand two pyramids, each rising above the water to a height of 50 fathoms, the part which is built below the water being of just the same height, and upon each is placed a colossal statue of stone sitting upon a chair. Thus the pyramids are 100 fathoms high, and these 100 fathoms are equal to a furlong of 600 feet, the fathom being measured as 6 feet or 4 cubits, the feet being 4 palms each, and the cubits 6. The water in the lake does not come from the place where it is, for the country there is very deficient in water, but it has been brought thither from the Nile by a canal, and for 6 months the water flows into the lake, and for 6 months out into the Nile again, and whenever it flows out, then for the 6 months it brings into the royal treasury a talent of silver a day from the fish which are caught, and 20 pounds when the water comes in. The natives of the place moreover said that this lake had an outlet underground to the Syrtis which is in Libya, turning towards the interior of the continent upon the western side and running along by the mountain which is above Memphis. Now since I did not see anywhere existing the earth dug out of this excavation, for that was a matter which drew my attention, I asked those who dwelt nearest to the lake where the earth was which had been dug out.
It is not merely a coincidence that in the visit of Herodotus in Egypt around 450 BC, he describes an artificially built massive lake which was having in the midst of the water two objects in the shapes of pyramids, and the halves of both pyramids were under the water and their other halves over the water. Does this not seem like a complex device that with the differentiating pressures of water and air creates electricity in a hydroelectric power station? Read it for yourself, and we need your opinion in that regard, particularly when the Great Pyramid of Giza has been discovered recently, two copper wires going through the granite blocks on one of its shafts above the Queen's chamber. Also are discovered complex channels underground which show signs of flowing water on their walls, in relation to the difference between the narrow shafts, and the Grand Gallery and the big underground chamber is clearly creating differing pressurized volumes of air or water which are well known in hydrotechnics for production of electricity through hydroelectric power stations. In addition to the depictions on the walls of the Temple of Abydos in Egypt, there are 50 kilometers away, which is a little further within the distance of the valley of the River Nile, the other conjoined configurations of the flowing water through bowls connected with pipes, having in their midst the sign of electricity, and are depicted several times the electrical lamps held by the human beings, and commanded by the so-called gods. In this depiction at Dendera Temple is Heket, which has the industrial version of the electrical light switch and transmit the electricity through the wire going out of its body to the lamps. Heket represents the visiting civilization on Earth, because the cult of the frog is one of the oldest in Egypt, and the frog god and the frog goddess were believed to have played very prominent parts in the creation of the world. We need your opinion regarding evaluation of economic capitalist relations, because up to recently it was sold to us like the masses were the slaves of the pharaohs, when the reality was completely different in ancient Egypt. Do you think that such unraveled technological depictions, particularly in combination with the writing of Herodotus, when he visited Egypt in around 450 BC, as described the massive dugout of an artificial lake with two pyramids in the middle with their halves under the water and their other halves above the water, It explains the role of technology in relation to the social element for the success of our economic relations in today's time. What do you think was the purpose of the Great Pyramid of Giza in Egypt together with the recently discovered massive underground channels? Was it a massive industrial structure built before the time of Cheops, as the Sphinx is proved to have been built before the time of Cheops, or was simply as it was sold to us as a burial chamber? Many depictions in the Temple of Abydos in Egypt clearly show close relations between so-called gods with capacitors on their heads and human beings, and even intimate relationships between them. Is this merely coincidence, or do they depict the true reality at such ancient times when other civilizations visited our Earth? In that regard, dear fellows, express your opinions about our human ancient history and what we should learn from it. The extremism expressing the ignorance to the level of stupidity in the ranks of our humanity on planet Earth, at different stages of our development has resulted in great losses of our human values in knowledge in all fields of human activities, as we recently witnessed through terrorist undertakings, which have tried to destroy, burn, and steal immense historical sites, as this photo in one of the chambers of Abydos temple shows its burned ceiling, but the light of knowledge always triumphs. So our humanity has the choice of enlightenment, or the abyss of ignorance.